Yeah, very interestingly that ProDG is actually playing the aggro druid that he has, and considering the start that he has already, I mean the Golaka crawler already being able to eat up some pirates has already caused it to be really strong this game. I mean he's already pushing Exigo for 8 damage this turn, has board presence, and Exigo going into his fourth turn. This board may be a little bit of a challenge for him to clear completely. Rogues.
Oh, yeah, it's quite good
Mm.
against the large number of rogues that we're seeing now. Or the large number of just pirates in general, actually. Apologies there. It looks like my mic was actually muted, so that was slightly awkward. Faster's muted.
I'm here listening to you, and nobody could hear your beautiful voice. We do apologize about that. But going back to the game, as you said, ProDG on the Druid, as you mentioned, the fact that it's rising popularity just because it is so strong against your bigger control decks, kind of like that big Druid, and also just because of the fact that it runs double Galactic Crawlers often. Any sort of pirates it goes against, it just makes the deck have that extra power spike.
Yeah, and as I was saying before I realized I was muted, I think it's definitely the druid that I would like. I really like bringing to tournaments now. We have seen Big Druid be quite popular in the previous weeks. In the first qualifier, Charles Hall actually managed to win with Big Druid in his lineup. But I'm definitely not going to be too surprised to see more of this aggro token Druid. And Exigo here, he is going to be going really low on HP here. But thanks to that Lotus Assassin, he's actually been able to get a Spreading Plague. And that could be really good, especially after this Living Mana comes down from ProDG.
Yeah, Living Mana, really good card, being able to go so wide on the board. However, Exigo is going to be able to just play this Spreading Plague. And Prodigy is probably going to be a little bit sad seeing these giant taunts here for his druid to try and burn through.
Yeah, the only solace here for ProDG is he has that Mark of the Lotus, so that's going to really help him. There's a huge difference here between having the 2/2s that are trading into these 1/5s and having some 3/3s here, because it means you can sort of double team on one of these scarabs, kill them, and then you don't just get killed on the return hit from another scarab, right? As 2/2s, they would be going down to 1 health and then just die to the second to another scarab attacking them. But now he's got a much cleaner way of clearing off these 1/5s, or at least reducing the number of them on board. And this is really important for ProDG here.
Yeah, however, Exigo does have this Bone Mare and going to be buffing up that Scarab 5/9. And it's going to be pretty difficult for Prodigy to get through that. And I actually like what he's doing here. It looks like he's going face with
Mm.
absolutely everything. I mean, he's an hour ahead. This is the perfect time to apply that pressure to really put Prodigy, on the back foot in this matchup.
Yeah, look, he has to go for Broke here at least. He has to actually try and kill ProDG soon. It's not like the Rogue deck usually has many defensive options. He does have Tar Creeper, but outside of Tar Creeper and the Corpse Digger list, it's probably the Rogue doesn't have really many taunts. We know Rogues traditionally don't have any kind of access to heal, so he is not going to be able to just attrition this Druid. He actually needs to take advantage of Prodigy's restricted mana now and actually try and push for lethal. And as it is now, he's set up lethal, but obviously Prodigy can clear off this 5/9 taunt, but that's going to cost him 3 of his treants here.
Yeah, three of these trends going to be disappearing. And he's going to also just use his Druid of the Swarm just to get another taunt there, the 1/5 Scarab, choosing that instead of the Poisonous. And do you like this bump though by the Trent into the Scarab?
Well, we're not really seeing Fan of Knives in Tempo Rogue decks anymore. If this was something like Miracle Rogue, you'd probably want to just hold back on the bump there, but it's probably okay for now. It means that, yeah, it means that the Scarab can't just like get the value trade here, but ultimately Exigo's been able to get enough of a turnaround with that time that the Spreading Plagues bought him that it looks like he's going to be able to take this game with that Lotus Assassin actually having clocked in for quite a lot of damage along across these 3 turns. You know, it's been a really big swing for him, and ProDG, he does have some options here. He can play this Crypt Lord, but he can't play like the Living Mana in the same turn. If he could have gone like Living Mana Crypt Lord, then that Crypt Lord would have become quite big. It would have been, well, if he traded the other Treant in first, it could have gotten up to 12 health, which is quite a lot. So that could have worked out for him, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't really have much of a much of a way to save himself here, as it's just gonna take the 1/5 attack minion and the Vile Spine here to trade into the Crypt Lord, and then the other 5 attack minion can go face, and that would do it for Exigo. So he's gonna go 1-0 up in this series, and we're gonna see. Oh, sorry. ProDG is gonna go 1-0 up in this series as his. Oh no, sorry, it was Exigo. Yeah, my bad. Sorry, yeah, Exigo on the rogue managed to make a comeback, and even though he did get Galakad early, it, you know, like that Spreading Plague really was the surprise factor there. That Lotus Assassin actually making a huge difference there.
Yeah, I mean, RNG really working out there for Exigo. That Spreading Plague just being able to do so much, pretty much stalling ProDG for about 2-3 turns. And those 2-3 turns where he lost damage to face to apply the pressure to the rogue was so crucial. And we saw it there because it just allowed Exigo to develop that bone mare, create a really big scarab that forced ProDG to trade in 3 of his Treants in. Not the greatest thing that you really want to do. I mean, you did get your mana back, but at that stage, I mean, it's also only empty mana crystals. It's not like you're going to get that mana that you can use the same turn. So unfortunate for him there, as Exigo is able to pick up the win there. And he's going to be locking in his Druid versus ProDG's Warlock.
Yeah, and it looks like Exigo is playing some kind of Jade Druid here, possibly even a Big Druid. But based on the fact that we saw that Spreading Plague, the Innovate actually does kind of tell me it is most likely Big Druid. Big Druid is kind of the only real deck running Innovate anymore. So it looks like it could be a Big Druid, and this is going to be up against a Zoo, which is going to be a really tricky matchup for Exigo here. ProDG has seemingly brought a pretty aggressive lineup, which I think if you're bringing the aggro token druid and, you know, also rogue, which was banned, it's not surprising to see him bring some other aggressive decks. Obviously, he also just has priest because of the power of the Razakis priest, but it's possible we could even see like a dragon priest or something else from him. But here we have the Zoo Warlock, and this is a really good start for him here. So I think he's going to be happy with just having these extra 1-drops. His curve's a little bit awkward afterwards, but really Exigo is kind of missing the ramp that he needs in this matchup. The Big Druid can actually do surprisingly well against the Zoo, but it needs to actually find that ramp early. The matchup is theoretically even, but it really depends on how much ramp the Big Druid can find.
Yeah, and going to turn 2 here for the Druid. Unfortunate that he doesn't actually have that wild growth, which he really would have liked. So just going to be using Shapeshift and just bumping into this Voidwalker. I kind of like it because you're kind of setting yourself up possibly for a better swipe a little bit later by doing the bump.
Yeah.
As a South Sea Captain comes down here and this 2/2 patches, he's going to be doing a little bit of work here.
Yeah, the bump seems totally fair. Here it just looks like you want to Wrath the Captain. Removing 4 power off the board, it's definitely going to help make things a bit easier for him in the future, and also once again kind of setting up the swipe a little bit with the patches going back down to only a 1/1. So now if ProDG plays something like this Crystal Weaver, then the swipe for Exigo would be pretty tempting.
Yeah, but looks like ProDG is even just thinking he's going to be going a little bit wide on this board with the South Sea Captain and the Malkazar Zimp. I really like this because once again he's playing around the swipe. The swipe is only going to be clearing 1 minion if he chooses to use it, and that will be pretty much the one target that he swipes, which I think again will probably be that South Sea Captain because he's going to be removing more damage. But picking up that Wrath, going to be changing his opinion here, as he's now going to Shapeshift again, and just trade bump into this Void Walker. So once again, being able to set up a really nice swipe if he's able to find one. But ProDG has got so much pressure available to him.
The Crystal Weaver looks pretty good now, though, because it buffs up both these demons. It kind of helps protect him against swipe. At worst case scenario, he'll still have a 2-3 left on the board if swipe comes down, because obviously Exigo could also use his hero power to clear up the Void Walker. It would mean he'd take a little bit more damage, but I mean, ProDG's other options here, look, he could go for the Doomsayer, which is a very aggressive play, but Exigo's not really that low yet, and I think he maybe wants to be a little bit more cautious with his resources. Unfortunately, he doesn't have anything else that really fits his mana curve well here, and that kind of might be what would tempt him into going for this Doom Guard. You obviously don't want to discard the Gul'dan, but it can kind of be worth the risk sometimes, and it looks like he does go with the Crystal Weaver. And I imagine we're probably just going to see Exigo forced to swipe. The Wild Growth is nice, though, as it allows him to actually just gain some mana. And it looks like he's just going to go with the hero power here. It looks like he's trying to set up for the Coin Primordial Drake next turn. Uh, I I wouldn't have minded the coin swipe there. You know, by swiping, he's essentially taking 5 less damage from this Crystal Weaver, and that's the really scary thing. As well as, you know, it would also happen to clear up the patches. So, swiping could have removed 6 damage there from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if he'll necessarily be able to recover. It looks like, you know, his plan is clear here. Coin Primordial Drake into Primordial Drake as a follow-up, and that should do well to clear the Warlock's board. But we're going to see if that extra damage he's taken now is actually going to cost him or not.
Yeah. Playing the Doom God first, though, losing out on that additional Firefly. However, looking at what he's just been able to pick up there, I think that Malkazar's Imp is a little bit more tempting than that Flame Imp. Because, I mean, you know your opponent's got coin. You know he's playing Big Druid. There's a very high likelihood that he does actually have that Primordial Drake.
Yeah, I don't think he knows he's playing Big Druid yet. He could still suspect it's Jade Druid. You know, all he's really seen is Wraths and a Wild
Wild
Growth.
Growth. Yeah.
So he could well suspect that it's just Jade Druid, but I do like holding back at least on the Flame Imp. The Malkazar's Imp could definitely have been played though, because it would have still survived this Primordial Drake, and it would have made the trades a lot better here for ProDG. As you can see now with the Crystal Weaver and the Malkazar's Imp, he's short of lethal. So if he'd actually played that other Malkazar's Imp from his hand, he would have lethal here, because he would just have enough to get through the through this Primordial Drake and still push. And it looks like he's now going to go with the Flame Imp and probably the Malkazar's Imp, as I think you do kind of still want to hedge your bets a little bit, especially going into your later turn 10. You may as well get the demons out now so that you can get some value from them afterwards.
Yeah, I mean that Gul'dan will be another way that you're able to pick up the win there. But looks like ProDG is going to be forced to trade away his Crystal Weaver as well as the Doom God here, just to push 2 damage. And as you mentioned, just not wanting to extend too much onto the board with that Malkazar's Imp. However, that would have given him lethal this turn.
Yeah, I really would have liked to see that Malkazar's Imp. That's just a clear mistake there from ProDG. He just took 2 damage, or lost 2 damage for no reason. And Exigo here might even consider coining out this Earthen Scales, just to try and give himself a little bit of HP here. With the second Earthen Scales in hand, I kind of like this. And now it looks like ProDG might even be coming close to a situation where he's kind of thrown this game. He would have, you know, we can see he would have won a couple turns ago if he'd gone with that Malkazar's Imp, but now he's getting into dangerous territory where the Druid is a lot more comfortable and a lot more able to use its mana, and he's going to have to rely on this Gul'dan and the push from that in order to get the victory here. And obviously, the Gul'dan is going to be extremely powerful with that Doom God having died, but whether it's going to be quite enough, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think it might just be a little bit too little too late there. As ProDG, the trades that he did there was very interesting. It's not like he was really trying to play around the Primordial Drake at all.
Yeah, I think maybe that was his thinking, is that he was going to play around Primordial Drake, but he didn't really maybe do the calculation on, you know, obviously the fact that the Doom God was just going to die to the second Primordial Drake there. So yeah, I think obviously a clear mistake there from ProDG, but now the decision is whether he wants to trade in this Darkshire Councilman. Surprising that he doesn't even want to play the Firefly there. He could have just got one more damage on this Primordial Drake, at least, and it's not really like a big resource that you lose if your opponent has some kind of AoE, and you've already just seen two Primordial Drakes, so I'm not entirely sure what ProDG's afraid of. Maybe just the Mind Control tech? That's the one kind of fear he could have, and maybe the one reason he didn't opt to play that Firefly there. But we can see here the double swipe, the extra earthen scales. All of a sudden, Exigo is decently ahead, at least on the board here. And ProDG, he still has one more turn until he gets that power turn with the Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Yeah, ProDG is going to be setting up this Darkshire Councilman most likely, along with that Saronite Chain Gang. Um, Obviously, if the Darkshire Councilman can still stick around on board when the Blood Reaver Gul'dan comes down, he'll be in a very nice position, especially with that incredibly buffed up Councilman. Um, but now the choice is really, does he play Can, or does he go for the tap as well as the additional buffs onto this Darkshire Councilman with the Saronite Chain Gang?
I kind of like the Saronite Chain Gang here. I mean, the can does kind of give you arguably a more solid body, but you do have to worry about something like Ultimate Infestation. That's probably the card that Exigo wants to play the most here. And the Cairn is kind of just a secondary target for that. I suppose with a Darkshire Councilman down on board anyway, you kind of know that he's going to play Ultimate Infestation here if he has it. And we can see Exigo does. And all of a sudden, Exigo's back to 20 effective HP. And that's massive. He even gets that second Ultimate Infestation, which is just important for the HP, as well as getting the Spreading Plague here. So now all of a sudden, there's no kind of lethal outs here for ProDG, and he's just going to have to try and play for some kind of value game here with this Blood Reaver Gul'dan. And the Doom Guard that comes out here can clear off this Ghoul, but I think he might want to just go face with it. As to be quite honest, I think he needs the damage.
Yeah, I really think the damage is more important here. I mean, your minions are pretty much protected. I mean, it's not the greatest resummons for Blood Reaver Gul'dan. I mean, you're missing, unfortunately, no Despicable Dreadlords or maybe another Flame Imp or even the second Doom God. But the Spreading Plague is just going to do so much work once again here for Exigo. The second time, it's just counting, except now this time it's when he's actually playing the Druid and not cheating it out,
Yeah.
in a sense. As the Maya Keeper just also going to be summoning that 2/2 Slime. And now Exigo with the board control here and with ProDG only on effective 22 HP, things are not looking that great for him.
Yeah, he does have a very good turn though here. Drawing that Bone Mare is really nice. He can Bone Mare up one of these Melkazar's Imps that nicely and neatly clears up one of these other 1/5s. Or here looks like he's gonna opt not to do that. He's gonna just go with the Despicable Dreadlord here, and then he can actually use the hero power to clear off the Ghoul. This is also a play that I quite like. Making good use of the Despicable Dreadlord, and he's still going wide enough on the board that he has a decent chance of expecting to be able to still play that Bone Mare next turn. We can see, or we have already seen two Primordial Drakes from Exigo, as well as two swipes. So ProDG has to kind of imagine that his board is likely to survive. He doesn't really have to worry about any AoE in particular. And here I think he's just trying to decide whether he wants to get this extra Firefly down now. And I'm not really sure what he's been saving it for, to be quite honest. We did see some turns where he could have played it earlier, after all that AoE as well.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe he's possibly holding it because he might have a little bit of elemental synergy in his deck?
Possibly, but the argument for holding it then is minimal because you could just hold the flame elemental that comes from the Firefly instead. I mean, look, the one damage wouldn't have necessarily done much. It's not as impactful as that Malkazar's Imp would have been earlier on, which would have just won him the game. But it could definitely still help him in certain situations. And here, it looks like Exigo's gonna take the damage from this Flame Imp, which, because he's hiding behind this Lich King, it looks like it might be okay. Doom Pact, not really a great draw against Zoo. It kind of costs you a little bit too many cards, and you could just kind of go into Fatigue as the big Druid with Doom Pact, so it is something you do have to be a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, however, ProDG's got this Bone Mare, which could do quite a bit of work here for him. Um, going to be buffing up with this Doom God just to take care of this Lich King.
Hmm.
And if he's still got a way to at least clear out this board here, and we're seeing now how good the Siphon Life actually is. You know, the 3 damage lifesteal hero power is so good, and that's I think
Yeah.
what makes the Blood Reaver Gul'dan so strong, especially nearing the late game.
Yeah, we can see that Siphon Life is just proving to do so much work here. Like that, honestly, bringing back the Doom God was huge. We can see it's stuck on board this whole time. You can see all these demons have done a lot of work for him. But that Blood Reaver Gul'dan, the newer, the hero power that he gets from it is just so important here. And now Exigo has a difficult decision. He only has 9 cards left in his deck. So if he goes with this Doom Pact, he's gonna burn 4 of them. But realistically, he can probably expect that that's okay. I don't think he's going to necessarily be in any kind of scenario where he can ever cast the second or ultimate infestation. If he does, though, I think largely his kind of choices here need to be between casting the ultimate infestation or casting the Doom Pact. The ultimate infestation, he kind of would have to use it on the Doom Guard, which is well, he could use it on the Bone Mare, but I think you kind of need to kill the Doom Guard to reduce the damage here. We can see Exigo is largely out of his armor gain mechanisms. We've already seen both Earthen Scales, the one Ultimate Infestation, and he has the second one in hand now. The one thing he does still have in his deck, though, which we saw him mulligan away, is Kuhn, the Forgotten King. And that is another way that he could actually gain a bunch of armor later in the game. So that could be an option as well. And here he's actually just going to use the Innovate just to get that extra 1 armor in from the hero power.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever another time that Innovate will be able to be played, as ProDG does pick up a Doom God now. And with that Doom God, things are not going to look that great here for ProDG, or for Exigo at least, as, excuse me, once again, ProDG has got options in to clear out a lot of this board once again. But looking like he's going to be developing the Cairn.
Yeah, he can play this a little slower. He doesn't have to go for the Doom Guard now. Basically, he's just getting down the damage that doesn't have charge now so that he can be more efficient with his resources over the next few turns. He knows that playing the Doom Guard now is not going to buy him lethal. But I do like this consideration to just maybe push the hero power face. Uh, Killing off the 1-2 here is maybe not as much value as just getting the 3 damage to face. And once again, because we've mentioned the fact that Exigo's used most of his armor resources and his board clear, I think you can actually just put a clock on Exigo here with this Siphon Life hero power, siphoning Malfurion's life directly.
Yeah, I really think that's the better option. So Blood Reaver Gul'dan really using those vampire teeth to good use there, just using it straight on a Gul'dan instead. As we were speaking about Kuhn being the really important card here for Exigo, as he does pick it up, but he's probably going to have to go for the 10 armor.
Looks
Ooh.
like he's going for the 10 mana. And he's just going to use the Ultimate Infestation as a way to gain some armor here. This is obviously a very common play with Kuhn, and I kind of like it. The only concern is that he is putting himself in a position where he needs to start ending the game soon. He has now gotten that Malfurion, which is obviously important because that can help counter the Siphon Life to face, at least. But still, Siphon Life kind of leaves you with a generally more versatile hero power than the Malfurion one, which is a little bit ironic, really, as Malfurion's hero power, the Plague Lord, I believe it's called, is actually a
Yeah.
choose one, so you would think it's a little bit more versatile, but nope. Siphon Life essentially gives you both effects, and you can target minions without having to take any damage from them. So Siphon Life is just obviously extremely powerful.
Siphon Life just being a little bit better than the Plague Lord, as Prodigy is just going to be looking at trying to find the best trades he possibly can. And I mean, Exigo is still sitting on a decent life total. I mean, what he can still do next turn is possibly play the Malfurion. And by playing the Malfurion, he's going to be generating obviously that 5 armor, getting the additional, say, 2 taunts, and he can start thinking about taking out that Ken. Reason being is because he does actually have Deathwing in hand. So he does have another get out of jail free card, kinda. I'd say free, but
Yeah, free except for the fact that if he plays it, he's only got 2 cards left in his deck. So by discarding his whole hand anytime soon, he's gonna basically be in a position where he doesn't have any real resources for the rest of the game, and so that's gonna be a major issue for him. Um, Obviously I like getting these two 1/5 taunts here, and with the hero power, using it for attack, it allows him to also clear off a few more of the minions, and he kind of just has to push face at some point with this Coon, as he does still need to find some way to actually kill ProDG, as if this game ever were to go into fatigue, ProDG would be quite far ahead, both because he has more cards in deck, and because of that Siphon Life hero power being so effective.
Yeah, Exigo, unfortunately, the only way that his hero power really becomes broken is when he's able to get the fan draw down. But that's just a case of if, ifs and buts and all of that. As Prodigy is now going to develop this Doom God, going to be able to use it to clear out that Scarab, and he's going to be able to push face here. And this is where, Exigo is looking a little bit behind. And I'm wondering, is this not the time to play this Deathwing?
Oh, it's pretty scary though. Like, sure, you can clear off the can and then you will at least clear the whole board, but then you're basically relying on the Deathwing to win you the game. I'm not entirely sure if he has any big minions left in his deck. I think not. I think this is. I think he's drawn almost everything. One card left. Mm, Actually, struggling to think what this one card could be because he's used most of his cheap spells as well as the most of his big minions. So he might actually have one sort of bigger minion left, maybe a Ysera or something like that. Um, but it looks like he's gonna try and go for the slower option here, which is gonna be pretty risky against this Siphon Life hero power in particular.
Yeah. So going to be developing
That
Medivh is just
is
going to be another
lethal
big minion.
at
So that's
10,
four,
13. Yep,
six.
that's
Yeah.
exactly lethal.
Oh,
Yep.
that Bone Mare top deck is exactly what ProDG was looking for. As this is going to allow him to tie up the series here at 1-1, picking up a really good win there with the Warlock.
Yep.
It seemed a little bit different from Zoo. I mean, ProDG was also holding on to those Fireflies for a really long time. I mean, we saw earlier on, easily about 10, 12 turns earlier, that he could have won. So,
Yeah, that was there was definitely some sloppy play there from ProDG. I don't think he'll be very happy with how he played that game at all. Uh,
mm,
he didn't really correctly play around that second Primordial Drake. If he just played the Malchezaar's Imp, it would have allowed him to trade. He didn't really think about the power he would have left on board after the Primordial Drake, and then not realizing that he had 7 power without the Malchezaar's Imp instead of 8, and then that means he can't trade through the Primordial Drake to actually get in for lethal with the Doom Guard. And then even after that, he just over traded into the Primordial Drake, essentially losing 2 damage, which could have mattered, but ultimately Exigo wasn't able to claw his way back into that game enough, and ProDG did take the win. So I think we can quickly go over the picks and bans, because I think we actually missed that when I was muted. So
mm,
ProDG has Druid and Priest remaining. We just saw his Druid in the first game,
mhm.
which is that aggro token druid, and then Exigo and his rogue was banned by Exigo, and Exigo has druid and mage remaining, and his priest was banned by a ProDG.
Yeah. Uh, Priest being banned, though, very interesting a pick. I mean, we have seen how strong the Priest is these days, especially that Razika's Priest. As we're
Yeah.
going into the third game here, and it's going to be a bit of a Druid matchup. However, Prodigy on the aggro Druid, and Exia obviously on the big Druid.
Yeah, and this is one of the matchups that we were kind of talking about at the beginning. The aggro token druid is favored in this matchup, almost 60% favored, so it's pretty heavily favored. The big key for the big druid, sorry, is of course ramping up and then finding those primordial drakes. Those can be really important, especially after, let's say, a living mana comes down. If you can connect your 2 primordial drakes into 2 decently sized boards, and then you can claw your way back with Earthen Scales, like we saw Exigo kind of doing against Zoo, then it can be a really powerful. Um, then that's kind of the best line for victory for Big Druid, but it's going to be tricky here. I mean, this is in many ways similar to the last series, but Prodigy doesn't really have that insane value from Blood Reaver Gul'dan this time. So I think if Exigo is kind of be able to put together the same kind of start he did last series, he might be able to make it. But we can see ProDG has a really good start with his Enchanted Raven, possibly into the Mark of your Charge next turn. I think here he's just considering the Coin Bloodsail Raider or Bloodsail Corsair. What are your
Bloodsail
thoughts about
Corsair.
this?
I actually like the Bloodsail Corsair. I mean, you are the aggro druid. You really want to apply a lot more pressure. And this is one way to actually do that. Because, I mean, the only thing that you're kind of very scared about is you got like a crawler.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of gives Galaka Crawler a bit more value, but Big Druid almost never runs Galaka Crawler, so it's not really something you have to be too concerned about. I really do like coining it out as well, because it also gives your Power of the Wild next turn a lot more power. Because you just have a wider board, and it better protects you against cards like Wrath as well, because he's not able to clear off your whole board. If we hadn't seen that Bloodsail Corsair, we could have easily just seen Exigo go with Wrath this turn to just clear off the Enchanted Raven. But here, Exigo, I'm not really a big fan of his choice to just use the hero power to clear off the patches. But what it's done is it's kind of baited him, or what ProDG's kind of done is baited Exigo into a play like that, and then the Mark of your Charge is going to be an option here, which, quite frankly, I think is the better option here because he does need to draw some cards. The Power of the Wilds in his hand are not the greatest right now, and I think he does kind of want a little bit more minion pressure. He's looking for something like Firefly or some of those cheap kind of tokens that he can play to get a little bit better use out of these Power of the Wilds.
Yeah, especially those Fireflies. The reason being is because they've also got 2 health. So just the normal standard hero power is not going to be enough just to clear them off by a simple trade or whatever.
Yeah, and also the nice part about the Mark of your Charge is Druids generally struggle against these bigger minions early on, and there's nothing really that Exigo can do on 3 mana to clear off a 4 health minion, whereas later in the game he will at least have options like Swipe. And here, Exigo, unsurprisingly, just going for the ramp. You kind of have to do this as the big druid, and he's really going to be setting up quite nicely to just go with Nourish plus Wrath next turn. But ProDG might just go with a board-wide buff here. I think he could just summon maybe with the first Power of the Wild and then buff with the second, but I think it might be a little bit better to go with the Druid of the Swarm if that's his plan. Then he can just go face as well, and he can also buff up that 1/5 taunt into a 2/6, which will be good against the Druid because of how well those high health minions actually do against Druid.
Yeah. Okay, so he's going to go with the board wide buff now with this Power of the Wild. I mean, he can still go.
Yeah,
he can still go with the Druid of the Swarm now next turn with the board wide buff.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of did it just to push 1 damage. I actually thought he was on 4 mana there. I thought he could do both, but even so, I kind of still prefer just playing the minion. If he wants to just push the damage, he could do it with the Direwolf or the Druid of the Swarm. I think he's obviously concerned about Swipe though, and that's kind of why he went with the buff there. He's just trying to put that Enchanted Raven outside of swipe range. Ultimately though, Exigo doesn't really have that, and it looks like he's just going to go with the Wrath here. It looks like he's even going to Wrath this for 3 to set up for the Primordial Drake next turn. I like this. He's being a little bit adventurous, or a little bit greedy, let's say, hoping that ProDG doesn't have any more buffs, and we can see he could get quite punished by this. The Power of the Wild now for the buff is going to be really powerful because it puts all these minions outside of Primordial Drake range, and he's able to push in for 11 damage here. Now, you know, Exigo doesn't really have many good options. The Primordial Drake against Primordial Drake is pretty good, but he is still going to be relatively low here. And with that swipe
I think he'll be losing.
It's going to be lethal for ProDG here.
Yeah, that swipe to face, trading of the Enchanted Raven and 7 damage left on board with that swipe as well, dealing the 4 damage. This is going to be the game for ProDG. It's just about whether or not he sees it. He's got several ways. I mean, you can also go for the Mark of your Charge.
Yeah, the hero power.
And the hero power. So there's plenty of options available to him here. I wonder if he maybe just didn't see the swipe as well for lethal.
I don't think so. I mean, there was 2 options there. He could have swiped the minion or swiped face. So I'm relatively sure he must have seen that. And maybe was just trying to find a way to tilt his opponent a little bit more, playing that Mark of a charge, which was off the top that turn, I think. That might have been his plan instead. So yeah, I think
I like the idea of tilting your opponent. I mean, it just gives you that psychological advantage, possibly. But that also depends on whether Exigo gets tilted quite easily or not. I know that for one, I get super tilted, and if something like that happened to me, I would not be the happiest person.
uh, Exigo here, like he could have definitely played that matchup more aggressively for the board. You know, holding on to those wraths and stuff. He kind of died with them in his hand, which is not really
Hmm.
a situation you ever want to be in. So maybe some things he could have done there to give himself a better chance. As we see going into this fourth game now with ProDG on his priest and Exigo on his druid, and this looks like a matchup we're a little bit more used to, especially from over the last 2 weeks, seeing what looks like a Razakis priest up against this big druid. And this is one of the reasons big druid has been seeing a rise in popularity, is it does even better than Jade druid in this matchup. So this is a matchup that Exigo is going to be happy to be encountering right now.
Yeah. So ProDG here on his priest still hasn't done his mulligan yet. Possibly just thinking, what's the best thing against the big druid that you know your opponent is playing? What is the cards that you really want to look for as the Razakis priest?
Mm, you really just want the combo pieces. As the Razakis Priest, you just kind of want the game to end as early as possible. But you can sometimes put on some decent minion pressure, and Raza is obviously one of the ways you can do that. And it's a combo piece, obviously, as well. So it's pretty important to find that. And this is not a bad start for ProDG. He has some early drops, and he does have that Raza. So as long as he can find that Shadow Reaper Anduin in a timely fashion, he looks like he could be in a pretty good position. And he does know his. I was gonna say he knows his correct BM mechanics there. You're supposed to threaten after after healing your opponent's face there. So that's a little bit of a misplay from ProDG.
Yeah, a little bit of a misplay. Hopefully, it doesn't come back to hurt him. Exigo probably would have spotted that though. It's just a case of whether or not he's going to be able to exploit it. As
Yeah,
looking.
if you're gonna go with the BM, go with the full BM, not the half BM. You got to commit to the line that you choose, and Exigo
Yeah.
is committing to a line of ramping hard here, as he's gonna go with this coin Jade Blossom into the Maya Keeper, and that is a line that makes a lot of sense. Lich King and Deathwing Dragonlord can both be pretty powerful up against this priest, especially if let's say they have a Shadow of Death to deal with the Lich King, then the Deathwing Dragon Lord can come down afterwards and be
Oh,
extremely difficult to deal with.
even more ramp available here for Exigo with that nourish in it. So what he could actually do next turn is go nourish into wild growth, because that would then put him up to what, 9 mana for the following turn?
Yeah, 9 mana for the following turn, which would
Yeah.
allow him to play Lich King into Deathwing Dragon Lord, which is exactly what we were discussing. So that is actually a pretty good line, and this is one of the ways that the uh, Big Druid can definitely run away with this matchup. The big thing is the priest only has a limited number of ways to remove all the big threats, and when they come down this early, the chances of you finding the death and even getting to that Shadow Reaper Anduin are quite low.
Yeah, Exigo picking up the Keeper and almost just instantly snapping it down. But I
Yeah,
suppose you can go for that ramp as well like this next turn, but he's just slowing himself down when he's going to be able to get this Lich King out, really.
well, I mean, if he just played the Nourish there, sorry, he would have gone up to 8 mana next turn, and that would have been enough. Actually, yeah, the Wild Growth is fine as well. It kind of gets him up to 8 mana next turn as well. The Nourish would have taken him up to 9 mana next turn, actually. Um, so if he'd gone for the Nourish and the Wild Growth, that would have even taken him to 10. But this is okay. It just means that he can't follow up the Lich King as cleanly with the Deathwing Dragonlord, but what he can do is he can go with Maya Keeper and Nourish for draw after Lich King as a way to give himself higher percentage chance of drawing some of the other dragons that the Deathwing Dragonlord will then bring out when it dies.
Yeah, I also like ProDG, what he did there, summoning that Raza, and then also using his hero power just to touch up the. I think it's just more of a sprinkling of Raza, making sure that those chains are sparkling as we see the Lich King come down here. And anti-magic shell, actually a very nice card for the druid. I mean, it basically keeps all your minions out of that range of that Shadow Word Death and Shadow Word Pain cards that specifically target.
Yeah, so obviously it's great against those single target spells. It's not so great against something like Shadow Reaper Anduin, of course, as generally it's going to end up putting your minions in range for Shadow Reaper Anduin. But if he can go with something like Spreading Plague and the Anti-Magic Shell, that becomes really powerful because those minions are going to be immune to pretty much every effect. And the priest will have to get through them the very, very hard way, as they will all be 3/7 taunts. But priest not known for having that wide a board, so the Maya Keeper into Anti-Magic Shell might not necessarily work that well.
Yeah, so we're going to see the Maya Keeper come down here, and the swipe going to be clearing out that Cabal Talon Priest. I mean, also getting the slime, really nice. There, you're just getting some board. There's no reason for you to get any more mana. It's basically just a waste. So you may as well get that 2/2 on board, and it does open the options of going for that Deathwing Dragon Lord next turn. And it then adds a little bit of doubt into your opponent's head because, I mean, there could be Ysera, Deathwing, or just about any other dragon still in your opponent's hand, and you don't really want him to bring down something, excuse me, like Ysera.
Yep. You obviously don't want to see any of the big scary dragons, but uh, you kind of do have to deal with that Deathwing as well. And now ProDG doesn't really have a way to deal with it. He's desperately kind of looking for the Shadow Reaper Anduin. He'd be looking for it regardless of whether Exigo had any of the big threats, just because he has to get it down as a way to win the game. And it looks like he's going to try and do a Shadow Reaper Anduin impersonation here with this Orkanai Soul Priest and the hero power. That's going to at least allow him to clear off some of these minions. He can clear off the 2/2, or he can use the hero power.
Or you can just go face.
Yeah, he could actually just go face. Looks like he agrees with you there. I mean, Exigo is already only on 6 HP, so going face here does seem quite strong. And now, now Exigo has to actually find a way to deal with this board. And it looks like he's going to go with the Spreading Plague here. Spreading Plague into the Anti-Magic Shell. This is about as big a board as you're going to see for the from the Priest. So this is probably the most value he's going to get out of this. He just needs to hope that ProDG isn't able to find some damage to go face. And we can see that he is. With this hero power and the Mind Blast, the taunts are not going to be enough. And ProDG is going to be able to take this series 3-1 here over Exigo. We saw him perform really well in the previous week, and with the way this tournament structure works, the players accrue points over all 4 of the qualifiers, and the top 4 points earners actually go on to qualify for the main season. So doing well in successive weeks is really, really valuable, and at the moment ProDG is actually the 3rd ranked player, tied 3rd ranked for points, so getting through now to the top 8 is really going to help him a lot, as the points scale quite highly, and if he can get into that top 4, he's going to get himself at least 40 points, which is 15 points more than he gets for top 8, so that's going to be pretty important for him, and especially considering some of the other players have also been doing quite well. We're seeing Chazul was also in the round of 16, and he's also made it through to the quarterfinals. As well as Blanky, and both those players did, and Superlubo, who all did really well in previous weeks. In fact, Superlubo is actually currently tied with ProDG for points, and Chazul is currently our leader on points after winning last weekend.
Yeah, so ProDG picking up a really important win there. As you mentioned, this is a tournament, like a qualifier, that really rewards consistency by the players. I mean, you can have one really good weekend, but if you really struggle the next 3, your chances of qualifying aren't nearly as high. But as you said, the points really start scaling here, and these players are really going to start pushing to try and make sure that they can maintain the points that they have, as well as to continue generating a lot more. But that is our first game of the round of 16, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, round of 16 here at the ESL Southeast European Championship online qualifiers. This is the third qualifier. The other qualifier is tomorrow. So if you are in that region and you feel like entering this event, if you type exclamation mark qualifiers in the chat, you'll be able to see when the next, or the link to the qualifier. There's also a giveaway. So if you live in the Southeast European region, once again, if you type exclamation mark giveaway, there are giveaways happening. There's an amazing ESL Pro 2.0 chair that's available for you, really comfortable, and it costs you nothing to enter. So if you
Yep.
haven't entered already, you really should.
Yeah. I just popped that chair on screen so everyone can see, but we'll leave the details as well as we go to a short break whilst we get ready for the top 8 here. So don't go anywhere. We will be back soon with some top 8 action.